Okay, here we have our last video for Chapter 3, and we're going to discuss outliers and influential points. Here's our standards. It's the same standards that we have been on in the entire chapter. However, what we are going to do is look at how outliers and influential points affect the correlation and the regression line. So let's start by talking about outliers and influential points. An outlier can be in the X or Y direction. They often have large residuals. Of course, when it's in the Y direction, it's more likely to have a larger residual than when it's in the X direction. It's an observation that lies outside of the overall pattern of the other observations. So it can be in the X or Y direction and have large residuals, but they may not have large residuals. As for influential points, a point is considered an influential point when removing it would change the position of the regression line pretty significantly. So let's say it would markedly change the result of the calculation. Points that are outliers in the X direction are often influential points on the least squares regression line. And it has a small residual if it's in the X direction, possibly. But it's considered an influential point. Okay. Let's look at an example that will illustrate how one point can have an effect on your data. So first we've got our data here. We're talking about the weight of 11 stand mixers according to Consumer Reports and their price. So our weight is going to be our explanatory variable and our price is going to be our response. So if we plug the weight in our list 1 and then our price in list 2, we can make a scatter plot of this data. This is going to be similar to what you would see. And let's describe what we see. There's a moderately strong positive linear association between the weight and the price. I see a nice band here and everything is generally in the same direction. So we're going to calculate the correlation and the least squares regression line. Okay. Our least squares regression line is our y hat, which is the expected price, equals negative 20.71 plus 12.53 times the weight, which is your X. And we have a moderately strong R of 0.74. Now let's see what happens when we remove a particular point, specifically this one right here. Now it goes along the lines of our regression line that we could construct here, so it doesn't necessarily look like an outlier here. But this last stand mixer is from Walmart. So what happens when we remove this point? So if we go into list 1 and list 2 and remove that last value, the last value is 8 and 30. We can recalculate our regression line and our correlation. Our correlation changed significantly, and so did our line. So it looks like our level of correlation went down, and we have a different line. Okay. So what happens to it if the Walmart mixer, instead of weighing 8 pounds, weighed 25? So instead of that last point being 830 the first time you calculated, and then removed the second time you calculated, let's re-enter it, but instead of 8, it's 25. Let's put that back into our calculator and calculate the new correlation coefficient, R, and the new least squares regression line. We'll get our new correlation coefficient to be even smaller, and our new regression line. Yet a different looking regression line. And remember, this is just with the change in 1 point. Okay, let's add a different point. Instead of the 2530 or the 830, let's add one that is 25 pounds. Oh, sorry, it's going to weigh 8 pounds, so 8 is your X value, and it costs $500. So we're going to put 500 in our list 2 for that last value. Then we're going to recalculate our new least squares regression line and correlation coefficient. And our correlation coefficient not only got smaller, it has gone in the slightly negative correlation direction. But it's really close to 0, which is saying that these points are now not really correlated. And here we have our new least squares regression line. Significantly different equation for a line, and this is just by the addition, subtraction, and changing of a single point in our data. So now you want to summarize what you learned about the effect of a single point on your correlation here. Be ready to bring it with you to class on Monday. Also, on Monday, you need to have read the following passage in your note guide here where it says, "Pickles will kill you." Make sure you pay attention to what is going on and how they are concluding the fact that the consumption of pickles causes death. And we will discuss that as well as finish the following example, the one after it, in class. And we will see you on Monday.